Okay, here we are on Southern Sports Gumbo again tonight for going into week three. We're going to recap week two a little bit. Again, week two where the SEC was dominant and kind of set their place up in football. And we're going to start the segment off with a little bit of a recap from week two, teams of the week, coach on the hot seat, player of the week, and then we're going to roll into week three predictions and previews for week three. So, are we all ready to go, guys?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Born ready.
Ready to go, man. I'm in my
All
2 minute
right.
offense.
All right. Well, let me get into this hot seat scenario right off the bat. So, my coach on the hot seat goes to my alma mater and Mike Gundy. And I will tell you, the hot seat is not just hot, it's burned up. I think with the seats already torched with a 3-9 record, out. Almost made a change last year, but he was willing to renegotiate his contract down and the buyout. So that gave him another year. But the 69-3 game this past Saturday against Oregon, and if you watch the game, the talent level was just very vast. And I think that's where this scenario is gotten with Gundy. And let me say this: when he first took over Oklahoma State, he was very innovative in the things that he did, and he had a very good staff that was very aggressive with recruiting. So I just want to talk about the differences and how it's kind of led to this. When he first took over, they went on high school, went into high school communities, held camps to identify talent to recruit. The NCAA later made that illegal for schools to do that, but he was innovative, is my point. When you look at what has happened with NIL, he resisted it. He even said recently that he thought it would change, and with where it was headed 2 years ago, he thought that the extreme amount of money that was headed into it would slow down. And individuals give money for players, that player not turn out, and he thought the money would come back down. Well, it's done the exact opposite. It's went up, and he just did not adapt to that at all, and therefore there's a shortfall of talent. If you look at his roster, there's nobody that just stands out that you can say this is an NFL guy. Throughout his years at Oklahoma State, and look, he's won more games there than anyone, so he's been successful. Went to bowl games for many years in a row, 16, 17 years in a row, and they always had NFL talent in the secondary, NFL talent at wide receiver, and now they just don't. NFL talent at running back, defensive lineman, occasionally offensive lineman, several offensive linemen played in the NFL. He's always had really good college linebackers. Well, this team doesn't have that. So again, it's just got to where it is. They've already started kind of looking at certain coaches. Some early names you're going to hear from the hot seat with him is Zach Robinson, played for Gundy and is the offensive coordinator of the Falcons. But he's a beloved guy in Stillwater, so he's going to be a candidate. But two other candidates that are already getting mentioned that I hope they pursue and go after, and one is Alex Golish, the South Florida coach. We will talk more about South Florida later, and then John Summerall, who's at Tulane. So both those coaches are going to be wanted by a lot of people. So they're going to get paid but good money by somebody at the end of this year, and so we will see where it goes. But in my aspirations, I would love to see them hire Golish or Summerall, either one. But I think that's where it's at. I think it's not a matter of if Gundy gets this is his last year. I think it's a matter if they let him finish this year out with the schedule they have. There's only 2 or 3 games. If they play Tulsa after a bye week, they'll win that game. Should win that game. If they don't, it may be over there. But I think it's just a matter of time. Anybody else want to deliver their hot seat coach?
Yeah, I'll go into mine. I've got Billy Napier, Sunbelt Billy from Florida. They finished the season so strong last year. They opened up 4-5, and I think a lot of people counted him out through 9 games last year. Then he goes on a 4-game win streak. They bring in a ton of talent, return a lot of pieces to this year's roster. They beat Long Island week 1, and then USF comes to town and they kind of lay a goose egg. USF stuns them for the first time ever in the swamp. And looking ahead to who they have the rest of the year, they travel to LSU this week. The following week, they travel to Miami. Then they get a bye week. They host Texas, host or travel to Texas A&M. Then later in the year, they host Georgia. Then they finish the season traveling to Ole Miss, hosting Tennessee, and playing Florida State. You know, could could Billy get it back on track and turn it around and finish 8-5 again this year? I think that's the only way he keeps his job after this season. Right now, the only 2 wins I see on their schedule the rest of the year are Mississippi State and Kentucky. And Mississippi State looked great last week, so that's not a given. Yeah, this is the most talented roster they've had in the era of Billy Napier. You look at the last 4 coaches: Urban Meyer, Will Muschamp, Jim McElwain, Dan Mullen. Through 40 games, they were all teetering around the 28 to 34 wins through 40 games. Billy's 20-20. So, I don't see a way that he keeps his job after this year, unless he starts with it this week and goes to Tiger Stadium and upsets LSU. I know we'll talk more about that game later, but the 2 names that come up to me the most to replace him are Summerall and Alex Golish. Golish upsetting him in the swamp, that would be a perfect move, making him the next head coach at the Florida Gators. So that's my hot seat take of the week. Who wants to go next?
I'll jump in. I've got Virginia Tech's Brent Pry on the hot seat. Pry is 16-21 through a little over 3 seasons. His biggest struggle is in close games. Games decided by 7 points or less, he's 1-12, and you just can't be 1-12 in close games. It just shows a lot of poor decision making and just not getting things done. The biggest problem with it is Virginia Tech had some relatively high expectations this year. They finished the year a little lackluster last year, going 6-7, and with the talent and everything, a lot of folks up that way thought that they were primed for a big season. But through 2 weeks they haven't done anything. They've looked awful. So Pry is definitely on the hot seat. As far as replacements go for him, locally they've got former Virginia and BYU coach Bronco Mendenhall, who's been a name that's mentioned, as well as oh Lord, the guy from William and Mary, Mike London, who's an up and coming coach. He's never been at a big program running it, but he's certainly somebody who would garner some interest there. So, Gumbo, who do you got on the hot seat?
I got on the hot seat Scott Satterfield from Cincinnati. Scott Satterfield is currently in his 3rd season in Cincinnati, and he's finished 5-7 last season, 3-9 his first season. Just to show you what job he took over in the previous 5 seasons prior to his arrival. Cincinnati had 9 wins, 13 wins, 9 wins in a COVID season, 11 wins, and 11 wins. And he went 3-9 his first year. He's only won 4 games in 2 years in the Big 12. The season began with a 2017 loss to Nebraska. Last week he did beat Bowling Green to start 1-1, but he begins the Big 12 slate with a road game at Kansas and a home game versus Iowa State. Those are 2 losses. So you can basically say after he beats Northwestern State out of Louisiana this week, they'll be 2-1. And then is where the problem lies, where he can't win in the Big 12. I think he's going to need 6 to 7 wins in a bowl game, which I don't see him getting the 6 wins. I honestly don't think Cincinnati can win more than 4 games this year. So I think the hot seat is going to catch fire sometime about midway through the Big 12 schedule. I have no idea who Cincinnati would bring on to replace him because they just did this a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what move they make, who they go after. I would think that Golish and Summerall end up at bigger programs than Cincinnati for sure. So
Yeah,
who's
those are
another
Power 4
group of
coaches.
five
Yeah.
coach that really has a chance to take that next step? You know, do you look at maybe bringing back a guy like Dan Mullen, who's always coached in the South and has UNLV rolling this year to try
Possible.
and breathe some life back into your program?
That's possible.
So
I definitely
let's.
think Mullen will be looking for a bigger place next year. Go ahead.
I was gonna say let's roll into our teams of the week. I'll get it started since we're talking about Dan Mullen. I'm rolling with the with UNLV as my team of the week. They hosted UCLA in Vegas this past weekend and really controlled the game from start to finish. They were up at 17 at one point in that game, and UCLA kind of made it a little bit closer, but at the end of the day, it was a 7-point win for UNLV. Something that I really like about them is they brought in 33 new transfers that are all in there too deep. A lot of former SEC, ACC, Big Ten, and Big 12 guys who were a little buried on the depth chart there, and now they're over in UNLV thriving this year. So UNLV is my team of the week.
My team of the week,
So
I'm going to throw you guys a little bit of a curveball. My team of the week is a high school team out of New Orleans, John Curtis Christian. In his 55 seasons and 623 victories, JT Curtis has never shied away from playing a tough schedule. Well, considering he plays in the Catholic League in New Orleans, uh, it, you may want to add a couple of cupcakes to your schedule. No. The Patriots loaded up on a plane and flew nearly 2,000 miles to California last week to play in the California Classic Bowl, hosted by San Juan Hills High School in San Juan Capistrano. They beat Cathedral High of California 54-36 to make the trip worthwhile. They came home with a smile, and now they get to go right back to the Catholic League in New Orleans. So hats off to JT Curtis, and hats off to the Patriots for flying 2,000 miles for a game.
So my team of the week, I'm going to roll back with the South Florida program. DMAC to kind of compete with your UNLV program for that non-Power 4 spot in the playoffs. South Florida with a big win over Florida. And when you look at how they've done it, so South Florida with a convincing win over Boise State in week 1, and then they bounce back and go to Florida and beat them in week 2. Their defense has been really good. Average giving up right at 303 yards a game defensively in 2 games. And they've been very opportunistic on offense with Byron Brown as a quarterback, a big guy that throws the ball and then also runs the ball in that offense, that Art Briles type offense that Golish ran at Tennessee, where you have a quarterback that's dual threat, and he's been very opportunistic in leading them to wins in those 2 games. So hats off to South Florida. To me, they're right in that hunt. I would say this. I would say if UNLV loses 1 game and South Florida has finished the season at 10-2, but yet they have wins over Florida and Boise State, I think you might even see them jump over an 11-1 UNLV team. A few weeks, we certainly will have some interesting conversations with that non-Power 4 between UNLV and South Florida. Sweets, who you got for team of the week?
My team of the week is the Vanderbilt Commodores, led by Diego Pavia. Listen, they're 2-0. Started off with a huge victory over Charleston Southern, 45-3. Came back last week, was down 20-10 at the half, reeled off 34 straight unanswered in the second half to win 44-20 against Brett Pry and his Virginia Tech Hokies. Listen, Clark Lee's got it going there. He's found a quarterback who's an enigma. He's lightning in a bottle. You know, he's a playmaker. Probably not a professional quarterback, but the kid's a gamer and knows how to win games. Vanderbilt's offensive line is playing great. You know, defensively they're stepping up. So it's good to see Vanderbilt with a pulse. And you know, that's my team of the week.
All right, so we want to jump into players of the week next, and DMAC, you want to lead us off with that?
Yeah, I'll roll in. I'm sticking with UNLV here for player of the week, and a guy, Amaris Brown. You know, he was questioned by the media leading up to this UCLA game. You know, how are you preparing for Nico on UCLA? And all he said was, you know, he's nothing special. I've gone up against 4 and 5-star guys. You know, Maris Brown started in the SEC, was at USF last year. So he's played Bama multiple times. He's played a lot of top end SEC talent. And, you know, at the end of the day, he finished with 8 tackles, 4 solo tackles, and he had a game ending interception with, you know, a minute left in that game to seal the deal. They were able to take a knee, run the ball a few times, and close it out. So, you know, the way that he backed up his talk last week, you know, getting that interception to end the game, that's why he's my player of the week this week.
All right, so my player of the week is John Mateer from Oklahoma. Oklahoma with a big win in the top 20 matchup over Michigan. John Mateer has been their offense. So they have, through 2 games, they got 2 wins or 2-0, 1,913 yards of total offense. Mateer has 810 of that with throwing and running the ball. 89% of their offenses came through John Mateer. Averaged 13 carries a game so far between the 2 games. Had 19 carries in this Michigan game. And he's averaged 50 yards a game rushing to go along with his passing. He's been very accurate as a passer, completing 70% roughly of his passes. So I think that's been very effective for him. The thing that I continue to question is, can he continue to run the ball 13 times a game and take the hits that he's going to take in that SEC schedule? But give him credit. Hey, he's been better than expected, I would say, so far. And, he came with high expectations, but he certainly played very well in that Michigan game and led them to a win, led them to a late drive, a 70-plus yard drive late in that game to put it away, put them up 2 scores. Let me give a little credit here to Oklahoma as a team because, I took some concerns with them at the beginning of the season. So I give them credit. They certainly have the defensive line that we expected them to have. I would say their secondary through 2 games is better than we thought they would be. Underwood was 9 out of 24 passing for Michigan, so I would give Oklahoma a little credit there. That also being said, from a team perspective, Oklahoma's only done what we expected them to do, and they still have a murderous schedule too, going to Tennessee, going to Alabama, playing LSU at home, hosting Auburn. I'm really looking forward to that Auburn game as it's coming up here pretty soon. So, but John Mateer, great start. Can they get some more out of their running backs though, or does he have to continue to lead that team rushing? Brian, who you got?
All right, my
Or Sweets, either one.
Go ahead, Sweets, take it.
all good. My player of the week. Go ahead, Gumbo. Go ahead.
Oh, man, you got it.
All right, Diego Pavia is my player of the week. Right now, he is PFF stat leader in the country with an overall PFF grade of 92.9. has got a passer rating of just below 200. I think it's 199.6. He's got 105 rushing yards, just under 500 yards passing in 2 games, and he's doing everything. He's hitting his receivers. He's extending plays with his feet. He's getting yardage on his feet when he can, and he's led Vandy to a 2-0 record. So, as long as he's upright and that Vandy line keeps blocking for him, got to roll with him.
He's been really good.
All right, I got a fever, and the only cure is more Blake Shapen. MSU's quarterback had the cowbell crazies clanging in Stark Vegas last Saturday when they knocked off number 12 Arizona State, mainly because Shapen fired a 58-yard touchdown pass to Brennan Thompson with about 30 seconds left in the game after Arizona State had taken the lead. Shapen finished with 19 of 33 passing for 279 yards, 3 touchdowns, and was clean and did not turn the ball over. This is what they need out of him for the rest of the season. Now, whether or not he can repeat this performance in SEC play is the big question. They got up for Arizona State. The crowd was into it. They kept the momentum going, and they fought back, which was impressive. Can they do it on a regular basis? Well, as long as they keep an even keel, and I think Shapen is the key here. If he can play within the confines of the offense, not let the moment get too big for him, and get out of what makes him successful, then I think Mississippi State can maybe get to a bowl game and knock off a couple of people in the SEC that you don't think they would. But he is my player of the week, Blake Shapen.
So before we roll into the games, we do have a question from someone in the live stream. So Connor wants to know who our sleeper Heisman picks are through the first couple of weeks. Does anybody want to take this one first?
I think this one's Sweets. I think it's Sweets' guy for a sleeper Heisman pick.
Yeah, I'm with him.
Yeah, right now, Pavia's leading everybody. He's the best quarterback in America according to PFF. If he can ride the wave, who knows? He said sleeper, so we preface with that because nobody really considered him a candidate, and I'm not even sure that a lot of people do now. But listen, the season we're some teams are 3 games in. His PFF is just below 200. He's tearing it up. If he can keep it going, why not?
Yeah, I agree. When I saw that question pop up in the chat, Pavia was the first name that popped in my mind.
I think Mateer would be a candidate, but he's not a sleeper. But yes, Pavia is the sleeper.
Now, I would think Mateer would be the odds-on choice right now, early in the season.
I think he has to be. The only thing that right now would be, can he stay healthy? If you want a guy that could build some momentum, look, I don't think this guy will be there in the end. But another guy that has played well in 2 games. First game he played, he ran the ball really well and scored. This past weekend, he was 24 out of 28, threw the ball well, and that's Jackson Arnold. Let's see what he can do over the next couple of weeks to kind of build some momentum. By no means do I think he's a Heisman candidate, but if you want a comeback player of the year, and again, an interesting storyline when Auburn plays Oklahoma at Oklahoma, the Jackson Arnold coming home to try to get a win against John Mateer. That's a lot of interest in that.
Yeah, I agree. Do you guys want to roll into the non-SEC games of the week now?
Let's do it. Sweets
Sure.
has got a great game there in his hometown.
Yes, sir. We got Clemson coming to the ATL to face 2-0 Georgia Tech. Clemson's 1-1 on the season, obviously after losing to our Bayou Bengals, and then coming back last week and getting a big win over Troy. They showed a lot of improvement against Troy, a little bit better rhythm offensively, but they need to continue that if they want to come to Atlanta and beat Georgia Tech. Listen, Georgia Tech's quarterback situation right now, Haynes King has performed well in the first game. Missed last week with a lower body injury. His status for this weekend is questionable. If he's healthy and able to play, it wouldn't be a big upset in my mind for Georgia Tech to beat those guys. If he doesn't play, I just don't think that they can do it. Georgia Tech's got to continue to take opportunities on the defensive side of the ball. They've got a ton of negative plays so far. They've got 13 tackles for loss and 6 sacks against Gardner Webb last weekend. And, I don't care if you're playing Sisters of the Blind, that's great pressures and a lot of defensive worth there. Against Clemson, they're going to need to be fast sideline to sideline because Clemson is more talented. But I do think that Georgia Tech can win the game. Clemson's a 6.5 point favorite. Betting on that game right now, gun to my head, I would take Georgia Tech in the points if King plays.
Yeah, I agree.
That's-
I predict Georgia Tech 27, Clemson 21 with King playing. I think they edge out the Clemson Tigers and get a win at home.
I got to think
I would-
that at some point, Clemson's going to be Clemson and Klubnik's going to be Klubnik because he has not played up to the level people expected him to play in the way he's played the last 2 seasons. So I'm going to say that in their third game now, I think they're going to hit a little bit of a rhythm, and I'm going to go with Clemson 30-20.
I like that score, Brian, and I would go something along the similarity of that. I'd probably go 30-24 Clemson. I do love Haynes King, and I love Brent Key, how he coaches that team. I think they'll be competitive, but I think Clemson will get the win, and a much-needed win there for them, their program. And they just kind of have this stigma over Georgia Tech also. It's been a while since Georgia Tech has competed tight with them. So anyhow, good game there. So if we move into Miami and USF, again, South Florida's got 2 big wins already, and now they're week 3. They have to go on the road to Miami after playing on the road to Florida. I think it's another game that'll be competitive. I like USF's defense. I mentioned earlier, barely giving up over 300 yards a game. So I think that defense will keep them competitive against Miami. I do think in this one, though, Miami with Beck and the running back Mitchell, I think they have a little bit too much offensively for South Florida to pull this one out. I think Miami wins this game probably along the lines of 27-17. But the spread's 18.5, and I would take South Florida. South Florida's 2-0 in the spread, and 2-0 decisive wins against the spread. So I would definitely take the Bulls against the spread, but I would take Miami to win this game. But I think it'll be competitive enough that South Florida still will be in that talk for that non-power forward team in the championship playoffs at the end of the year.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're going to, regardless what happens to USF this week, if they go 11-1 with a loss to Miami, upsetting Florida, upsetting Boise, they're going to be your playoff team. I think Miami's going to win pretty big this weekend. I'm calling a 35-17 win for Miami. I think Carson Beck's going to have a really good game. That's not to discredit USF at all by any means. There's just a lot of talent in Miami this year. Beck's playing good football right now. CJ Daniels, the wide receiver, looks really good, making highlight plays early on. So I think they're going to have an easy time finding the end zone this week.
What's the line on that game, Kevin?
18.5. So D-Mac barely squeaked the Bulls against the spread, but he picked Miami to win. 18.5.
I really like South Florida and the 18.5 against Miami. The South Florida's played as well as anybody in the country. If you put Alabama or you put LSU or you put another name with their first 2 wins, they're a top 5 team. But because they're South Florida, they're just they've just squeaked in this week. It wouldn't surprise me if South Florida won the game. I think that they're a good football team, and I'm not a big crystal ball guy. So he's always going to lose a game or two that he has what a lot of people think is no business losing. But I definitely take South Florida on the points here.
I would agree with you, Sweets. I'm going to take the points, but I think that Miami's going to have enough to win this game. They won't cover, but you know what? Miami, you can talk about Carson Beck, you can talk about their skill guys. What really impresses me so far about Miami is their physicality, the way they are so physical in the trenches. And that is something that the old Miami teams used to have back in the day when Jamie Johnson was there. So I like what they're doing. I like this game. I think they win it 33-23, something in that range. But the Bulls will cover.
So this brings us to the last game, non-SEC, last game of the week. I picked Duke at Tulane. One really cool storyline in this is Darian Mensah returns to Tulane. Right now this game is pick. So, it's going to be a really good game. Tulane's running the ball extremely well early in the season, 510 yards on the ground through 2 games. Their defense has already forced 7 turnovers in 2 games as well. But then you flip over to Duke, and Mensah's thrown for 723 yards and 5 touchdowns through 2 games. So, it's kind of a tale of two sides. Duke's going to really want to air the ball out in this one. Tulane's going to want to try to shorten the game by running the ball a lot. Duke's run defense is pretty solid this year. They've been absolutely gutted by the pass game so far this year. So, can Tulane stop Darian Mensah this week? And I think the answer to this one's going to be no. I've got Duke winning a 31-28 game with a late touchdown to win.
Well, this game, is I believe that Tulane's had this marked down for a while now, ever since Mensa, to borrow an old Steve Miller Band line, took the money and ran. And I believe it's going to be all po' boys and a beat of beer for the guys that like Tulane and the Green Wave. I just like the way they play at home. I like, they didn't actually play too well last week, but I think they're looking a little bit ahead to this game, and I think they're going to get Duke's going to get everything that they got. So I'm going to say Tulane knocks them off by a field goal late.
Put me down for the prodigal son coming home and stealing a victory here. I think Duke wins by a touchdown or so. Mensah's the real deal. He's shown through 2 games why they paid him so much money. I mean, he's just shy of 800 yards passing, mobile. I mean, he's doing everything for him right now. I like it. Give me Duke here.
I'm gonna chime in there with that too. Give me Duke by a field goal late. Tulane will represent themselves well and make this game very competitive, though, and we'll play with a lot of passion, as Brian said, but give me Duke late. So that brings us into some big games within the SEC. One more non-conference game, and that would be Alabama and Wisconsin for the Big Ten SEC matchup. So week 1, Texas lost to Ohio State in the Big Ten SEC. Week 2, Michigan lost to Oklahoma, so that's 1-1. So now we've got Alabama hosting Wisconsin. Interesting game, and from the standpoint of week 1, Alabama played down a little bit. Florida State dominated them with a running game. Week 2, Alabama was decisive in their win over UL Monroe. Obviously, the difference in the competition there was quite a bit. But now we're going into week 3 with a team that has some similarities with Florida State, and that's Wisconsin. Now, look, Wisconsin's not as Florida State on both sides of the ball. But they brought Jeff Grimes as their offensive coordinator, who spent a couple years at BYU and was really developed a spread power running game at BYU. Dave Aranda hired him at Baylor, and first year at Baylor, he was very successful. Second year, not so much, but they did the Big 12 championship that first year that he was there with Baylor with Aranda, and actually won the Big 12 championship against Oklahoma State. So, and within that also, they have brought the quarterback from Minnesota, Pyron, that is a running quarterback. So I think the interesting thing in this game will be, will Alabama defend that running threat from a spread better than they did against Florida State? Interesting point there to watch. Now, look, Alabama is a 21.5-point favorite. I think they win the game. They may even cover. DeBoer at home, it's been proven that he's coaches very well at home, and they kind of ride that momentum and that bandwagon at home. So, I think Alabama's going to win the game 38-17, something like that. But I am going to be interested in see how the defense plays against the run and how that will translate into SEC games.
Yeah, I think Alabama wins this game big. I've got Alabama 45, Wisconsin 14. I think Deontay Lawson's really going to eat up that run game this week that Wisconsin has. I don't know if Alabama gets back on track and becomes a playoff team this year, but they definitely take care of Wisconsin this week.
I agree with you, DMAC. I think I'm not a big Kalen DeBoer fan. I think he's a little overrated as a coach, but Alabama's just got too much talent for Wisconsin here. Put me down for 42-20, Alabama. Wisconsin, maybe it's a garbage touchdown late to make it look a little better than it actually was. Like I said, it's just Jimmy's and Joe's in this game, and Alabama just has too many of them for Wisconsin here.
Last week, Alabama quarterbacks were nearly perfect. If it may have been perfect, didn't throw an incomplete pass. This week, I think they're not even going to worry about quarterback play. I think they're going to get back to what Alabama used to be about, being physical, running the football. I think they're starting to kind of figure out the running back room, the running back rotation. I think they're going to try to run it right down Wisconsin's throat. I'm going to say Alabama by 17.
That would line up with Wisconsin's strengths and weaknesses. Wisconsin's strength is actually their secondary, and their weakness is their front seven. So it'll be interesting to see how Fickell, if he brings that defense along. And to your point, Brian, can they defend the Alabama run? Very interesting call there from the standpoint of how Alabama might attack the Wisconsin defense. So that brings us to another really interesting game, probably the game of the week for me, and that's Georgia and Tennessee. Sweets, again, this one's two teams you're very close to. One, you live in Georgia, and two, you have family with Tennessee. So let's hear what you got, man.
Yeah, I got a wife and daughter that are at each other's throats this week. Isabella just graduated from Georgia. T graduated from Tennessee just a few years ago. So it's certainly a house divided here. But listen, Georgia's a 3.5-point favorite going into Rocky Top this week. I think that Tennessee's going to win the game outright. Gunnar Stockton has been very, very conservative so far this year, and I just don't know that he's that good. Losing Beck, I think, is going to sting a little more than a lot of Georgia fans thought it would. And Joey Aguilar, Tennessee certainly through a few weeks has won the quarterback battle between him and Iamaleava, because one's 2-0 and one's 0-2. Aguilar's been great. He's manipulated the pocket. He's hit open receivers. He's led the team. He's done everything he's supposed to do. Georgia's defense is still top notch. They got speed to boot, a lot of talent on that side of the ball. I don't think it's going to be a very high scoring game though. I think Tennessee's running game, if they can get that going a little bit enough to keep them honest, Aguilar's gonna hit them with a few deep balls here, and I got Tennessee with the upset. I'm gonna go Tennessee 20, Georgia 16, up on Rocky Top.
Well, you got to look at this game like this. Tennessee has been hot. They've done everything right. They're putting up 60, 70 points the first couple of weeks. The receivers are getting open. The running backs. And by the way, I have to throw a bone out to Star Thomas, who played his high school ball right up the road here for the Homer Pelicans here in North Louisiana and scored 3 touchdowns last week for Tennessee. And he's become a big go-to back for Tennessee. Georgia has not played well. They've been a little bit cold. So obviously I'm going to pick Georgia. I'm going to pick Georgia 20-13.
So I think this is a game of matchups. I love this game. It's going to be a great game to watch. But when I say matchups, so to beat Tennessee, you got to be able to play man against the Tennessee wide receivers because the way they spread you out defensively, if you try to play zone against them, Tennessee will just run the ball down your throat if you end up with 6 in the box, which that's what Tennessee wants. They want to get you spread and light in the box. Well, Georgia has really good cornerbacks. Dalen Everett came back last week. You got Robinson on the other side. You got good secondary players. And they also bring guys off the edge with the athleticism they have at linebacker. So I like Georgia in this game simply because of how they can match up. And then on the other side of the ball, Tennessee's 2 starting cornerbacks are out this game. And I think that's going to be just enough for Stockton to get some key completions. I think it's a low-scoring game like you guys. I'm going to go Georgia's best, has the best kicker probably in the SEC. So give me Georgia 24, Tennessee 17, and a game that's really a dogfight. And it'll be probably the best game to watch this weekend.
Yeah, I like this game a lot. It comes down to Josh Heupel, one of the brightest minds on the offensive side, going up against Kirby Smart, one of the brightest minds in defense. At the end of the day, I'm going to roll with Kirby over Josh Heupel. I think Georgia wins this game 28-24, just barely covers the spread. But it's going to be the game that I think everybody's tuned into this weekend.
So we roll from there into the Rebels and the Razorbacks. We had a couple games last week that Mississippi State needed to win to get in bowl contention. Kentucky needed to win to get in bowl contention and didn't pull it off. Arkansas needs a win in this game to really substantiate themselves for a bowl. Sweet, who you got?
I got Ole Miss winning this one. They won their SEC opener 30-23 against Kentucky. They're efficient so far on offense. They've got a quick game rhythm. They're keeping the ball moving. Defensively they've got a strong front. Their DBs have looked good so far this year. They've been able to get a pressure without using their linebackers and stuff, and that's been a good thing. That'll be key against Arkansas and Taylor Green, because he's a lot better quarterback, I think, than he's given credit for. Arkansas is 2-0 as well. They bombed Arkansas State the first week, which it's always nice to see Butch get hammered. And they won last week as well. I think the biggest key to the game for Ole Miss will be to come out, hit them early and often. I think Ole Miss jumps on them early, maybe jumps on 14-0, and kind of takes the life away from Arkansas. So that being said, go ahead and put me down for Ole Miss 41, Arkansas 20. Who do you got, Kev?
So this is a game I like as an upset this week. I think Austin Simmons has been kind of up and down. I think Arkansas is going to come into this game with a lot of passion to get a win. Again, they need this win. And I think that you'll see Arkansas win this game in the Grove, in Oxford, Mississippi, 34-27. I think Arkansas has been a little better than expected so far with their offense, with their running game, and I think that they'll take a balanced offense and squeak out a win late.
I think this is the kind of game that gives Lane Kiffin fits because you don't really know what Arkansas team is going to show up. Granted, Green has played outstanding. He's probably, if you had to vote for SEC Player of the Year through 2 weeks, he may get it. He's put up that impressive numbers through 2 weeks. But I have the winning formula for Lane Kiffin. Sit Austin Simmons through the first quarter. He's thrown 4 interceptions in the first quarter. He's thrown no interceptions after that. So sit him in the first quarter. Just bring him out in the second, and the ball game's yours. Ole Miss 30, Arkansas 23.
And do we know if Austin Simmons is healthy? Coming off, getting banged up a little bit. So anyhow, go ahead, D-Mac.
Yeah, I agree with Sweets. The defense for Ole Miss has looked really good. But on the other side, the Arkansas offense has looked great. Taylor Green's playing like a video game player right now. Omega Blake's looking good. Jalen Brown's looking good. And in true Lane Kiffin fashion, he always loses a game he has no business losing. And that's going to be this week. I've got Arkansas winning 38, Ole Miss 35.
Love it.
Like it.
So 2-2 in that one.
Who's up next?
I think we got Florida and LSU with D-Mac next. D-Mac's got the next two. These next two are great games too.
So we've got my number one hot seat candidate going up and traveling to Death Valley to take on the LSU Tigers. I'm going to start with talking about LSU. LSU's coming off a sloppy win over Louisiana Tech last week. A few questions that I have for LSU. Braylon Moore, the center, is going to be out this week, which means DJ Chester, the starter all last season, is going to have to step up and play center this week. The O-line's already struggling a little bit, so with a new piece in there, that's going to be a storyline and question to follow. Trades Green is going to miss some time at tight end for the Tigers. LSU really needs to develop a run game and be content with not trying to push the ball deep downfield in the pass game. Another question mark for the Tigers is through 2 games, they've got 15 penalties for 122 yards. So playing a little sloppy and undisciplined so far this season. The bright spots for LSU, though, the defense is really good. Only giving up 2 touchdowns through 2 weeks. The touchdown against Louisiana Tech was with some backups in and a little bit of blown coverage. So they're playing really good football on the defensive side. Another bright spot is Garrett Nussmeier's your quarterback. So, you've got 110, 115 teams beat off the bat with a guy like Garrett Nussmeier at quarterback. Then you flip over to the Florida Gators. Last week against USF, they only had 143 yards of total offense in the second half. They're another team that's pretty penalized. 11 penalties for 103 yards last week against USF. One that was potentially a game-changing play with a defensive lineman getting ejected for spitting in the game. It makes me kind of wonder if Jalen Carter for the Eagles was watching that game. Another thing is through 2 games, they have allowed 18 tackles for loss. Long Island had 11 tackles for loss against them, and USF had 7 last week. The LSU defense is much better than both of those defenses, so they're going to have to really execute blocking. Yeah, this is really a game where they've got to really bounce back to get back in the win column. Yeah, the defense also for Florida only has 1 sack through 2 games. So a few bright spots for Florida, though. Jaden Baugh is running the ball really well, almost 200 yards on the ground through 2 games. Vernal Brown looks really good in the return game for him. So my final thoughts on this one is LSU's got to get the offense moving and limit the penalties. If they do that, they're going to start the season 3-0. Florida's got to try to get some pressure on the quarterback to disrupt Garrett Nussmeier and his timing. I don't think that happens. Their season doesn't get back on track this week, and the Tigers win somewhat of a low-scoring game, 24-7.
Your lips to God's ears, buddy. LSU. This is a game LSU should handle. It's at home. We got Nussmeier. Everything's rolling smoothly. What scares the heck out of me is if Moore isn't at center, bringing Chester in there. Last year and the other night against La Tech, he just hasn't been it, and I'm not sure what it is. It's certainly not, it's certainly not his physical prowess. He's a big kid. He's a great athlete. He just hasn't been able to put it together for whatever reason, and that really scares me against an opponent like Florida, because Florida does have some talent now. As you had said earlier, Florida probably has more talent this year than they have under Napier, and they can show up and manifest at any time, and that scares me. But I do like LSU to win the game. As you said, I don't expect it to be too high scoring. I'll go LSU 23, Florida 13.
Well, through 2 weeks, I don't think Garrett Nussmeier has been quite in sync in the offense, and maybe it's because that they haven't had any semblance of a running game. I don't know, but I think this week against Florida, um, he's going to get up again like he was against Clemson. It's going to be at home. The crowd's going to be into it. I think he starts to hit his stride a little bit, and we start to see the Heisman contender that we thought we would see before the season started. So I'm thinking Nussmeier is going to play a huge role in this game, and I think LSU's defense is just going to completely engulf Florida's offense. So I'm gonna say it's not even going to be close. I'm going 28-10 LSU.
I think we'll see an offense that's similar to what we saw against Clemson. We'll use the short passing game to establish first downs. We'll try to run the ball a little more consistently against Florida like we did against Clemson. I do think it's going to be a challenge because I think Florida's defensive line with Caleb Banks is absolutely legit. I'm going 20-10 in a game that's kind of ugly and a slugfest. I still don't know that LSU's offense will look consistent. So I hope they do. I hope we simplify things and go, like we talked about the other night. I hope we see the wide receiver substitutions slim down a little bit and go with Brown, Anderson. I think you'll see the other Anderson in the slot where Trey-Dez was. And then I think you'll see Bauer Sharp more as the tight end. And I hope when Green comes back, we see Green in line more. I think the way we used him against Baylor is the way he needs to be used. And I think, with the wide receiver room, Xavier Thomas, again, you'll see him this week. And I also think you'll see him in the running game like we have to try to, beat teams on the outside with outside zone. I think you'll see him get 4 to 5 carries, and I think you'll see him effective just like he has been. He's so fast to the corner. So I think, I like that 20-10, 23-10 type win for LSU. The defense for LSU is just so good. It should have been a shutout. dropped an interception, or it would have been a shutout last week. So I just don't see Florida moving the ball.
So before we jump into the Texas A&M Notre Dame game, we've got a couple more questions. So from Bob's Garage, he wants to know, who do y'all think will upset Ohio State this year? I'm going to make a bold prediction. They're going to go 12-0 in the regular season. They're going to beat Illinois at Illinois. They're going to beat Penn State in a close one. But then Penn State's going to come back and beat them in the Big Ten championship this year.
So you called it when you said at Illinois. I think Illinois at home will upset Ohio State this year. I think Lima has his team playing well defensively. He's got an experienced quarterback. You know, we have a friend that'll be nuts over this when he hears the prediction. But I think you'll see Illinois beat them at home somewhere along the lines of 31-20. And I don't think it'll be a last second win either. I think Illinois will win that game and be dominant.
I think if they have a chance to lose, I'm going to go with that home game against Penn State. I just think Penn State's got a lot of experience about them now, you know, with the run that they had last year. And I think Ohio State's just got a lot of inexperience, you know, replacing all of those starters from last year. Yeah, they have great players, but I think it's just so hard to keep that going for 12 or 13 weeks. So I think they slip up at home against Penn State.
I agree with you, Gumbo. I think Penn State's as good a pick as any here. They've got a lot of experience coming back. They love their quarterback up there, and I think that James Franklin is a good enough coach to get it done. I'm still, Ohio State won it all last year, but I'm still not sold on Ryan Day as a head coach. I like Penn State. I like Penn State to upset Ohio State, but I still think Ohio State gets to the playoff, and they're going to do some damage.
We have one more question we'll answer real quick from Bob's Garage. You'll think Nuss is in the running for the Heisman. I definitely do. But when I look back at Joe Burrow's Heisman season, the way that he beat Texas on the road that year, and I look back on Jaden Daniels' game against Florida where he ran for 200 plus yards. We need to see a moment like that from Garrett Nussmeier. And I think we will at some point. So I think he's definitely in the running. I think he still leads the odd makers favorite for the Heisman. So yeah, I think he's, top 3 or 4 for sure. At the end of the season, I think he's invited to the Heisman ceremony for sure.
Yeah, the Clemson win was a huge win, but it wasn't like he set the world on fire. He played great, made few mistakes and left with the W, which is always the most important thing. But statistically, so far, he hasn't been it. I think he turns that around, and I hope it starts this week with Florida. But I think at the end of the season, Nuss is in contention. I don't know that he wins it, but he'll be in the top, 5 or so receiving votes there, I believe.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that has to have that Heisman moment. He's going to have as many or more chances than most of the contenders to have that Heisman moment because he's going to play in a lot of big games this year, especially if LSU continues to roll and stays in the top 10. So, I think he's in contention. I think he'll stay there.
I'm gonna say let's wait till Ole Miss on the road. I think that's another game that we're gonna have to see him play well in. I think LSU, like we said, has enough to beat Florida at home. When they go to Ole Miss on the road, the offense is gonna have to step up a little bit more. So before I throw him into that deep contention, I want to see, does he lead us offensively against that Ole Miss team? I think that's his first chance for that moment. So I'm going to wait till that moment to see.
Now let's go over to the Texas A&M at Notre Dame game. Last year Notre Dame got the win in College Station last year and then fell to Northern Illinois the week after coming off that high. I'm going to start with talking about Notre Dame in this one. They lost week 1 to Miami, but they got a week to really get things back on track with a bye week last week, and then they get to host Texas A&M at home. My biggest question mark for them is they've got to get the run game going. It was horrendous. Jeremiah Love had 10 carries for 33 yards against Miami. He's a guy who was a Heisman contender 2 weeks ago. I think he's got a chance to get back on track for that too. Their O line also allowed 3 sacks against Miami, which is really uncharacteristic for a Notre Dame offensive line. And then lastly, their defense allowed too many 15-plus yard plays against Miami. 5 in the passing game and 2 in the run game. A few bright spots, though, for Notre Dame is their defense only allowed 3.3 yards per carry. Their passing game had some explosive plays in it. Was really impressed with how Carr played going into a road game at Miami, first game starting. And then another bright spot is they had that bye week to really get focused on this one. And then you roll over to Texas A&M. 12 penalties for 104 yards through 2 weeks. Way too many penalties. Utah State scored 22 points against them last week. And then will their quarterback play stay consistent? Marcel Reed's been super efficient so far, completing at almost 70%, 7 touchdowns, no interceptions. But as we all know, last year, he had a great game against LSU. He was a real high-low guy last year. So he's been on a peak these last 2 weeks, but is the valley coming this week? And their run game's been really good, and their defense is coming off a 6-sack game against Utah State. 2 other really impressive pieces about Texas A&M are Mario Carver and KC Concepcion, both transfers. Through 2 games, those guys have 22 catches for 381 yards and 6 touchdowns through 2 games. So this is going to be a really back and forth game. You've got Mike Elko, who was a DC a while back at Notre Dame, going up against Marcus Freeman, 2 great defensive minds. I think that Notre Dame's going to be able to establish the run game early in this game, and they're going to be able to lean on that a lot. Texas A&M is going to have to move the ball on an experienced defense. Christian Gray is leaps and bounds better than any defensive back that Texas A&M's faced thus far this season. Playing on the road's always tough for Texas A&M too. So I think this is going to be another close game, but it comes down to which defense makes a play late. I think Marcel Reed's going to be pretty efficient. I don't think he's going to be as good as he has been the last 2 weeks. So I think the Notre Dame Fighting Irish defense makes a key play late in the game to win this game 31-24.
All right.
Yeah,
I'm buying that.
I agree with. I agree with you, DMAC. I think that Notre Dame at home is going to be a little too much for Texas A&M. I think a lot about Marcel Reed as a quarterback. I mean, I still have nightmares about what he did to us in the second half last year. So I think he's going to come out. I think he's going to have a good game against Notre Dame. But I honestly think that Notre Dame at home, with that championship experience with Marcus Freeman as a coach, I think that their defense is just going to be a little too much for A&M. I like your score. I like 31-24. I think it's a good pick.
I think this is going to be a matchup game. I think this is a bad matchup for Texas A&M, and the fact that you know their bread and butter is running the football, and as you guys mentioned, Notre Dame is stout against the run, and I just don't think A&M's going to be able to get much going offensively, especially with the crowd into the game. So I'm thinking in the fourth quarter it's within a touchdown, but I think Notre Dame pulls away, and I think they win it by at least 10. I'm going to say something like a 27-17.
I like that. And again, I think matchups is right. I think it's a line of scrimmage game. I think just exactly what you said there with Notre Dame's defense. And then I think you flip it on the other side. I think you'll see Notre Dame's offensive line step back up this week. I think you'll see Love run the ball, and they'll establish some clock management there with that. I think A&M's defensive front seven is not their strength. I think they're solid, but again, that front four on the defensive line, they had to replace a lot last year. So I think that Notre Dame will take advantage of that and run the ball, and then also they'll stop the run. And so I like Notre Dame in this game too. I'm going to say 27-13. I don't see A&M doing a lot offensively. The thing with this on the matchup piece, Notre Dame has very good cornerbacks. Last year that led them into the playoffs. And I think you'll see their cornerbacks really fare well against A&M's wide receiver. Concepcion will have his moments, but I think the rest of the wide receiver room, Notre Dame's secondary, will shut it down.
All right. We'll move on to Vandy at South Carolina. This is a game that I've been kind of interested to see because the Gamecocks are giving up 5.5 points to Vandy in a game at Williams-Brice Stadium, and which tells me the odd makers believe this is a field goal game. Usually, you're going to give 3 points to the home team anyway, so the odds makers are thinking this is going to be decided by a field goal. I think I'd have to agree with them. Both teams are 2-0. How they got there, different story. Diego Pavia versus Lenora Sellers. Don't believe the hype. South Carolina Heisman contender, struggling to find a consistent passing game against South Carolina State. He passed for a mere 128 yards on 11 completions. He rushed for 23 yards. Granted, they didn't need him in a 38-10 win because they scored 3 special teams touchdowns. 2 returns by Vakari Swain, who's become the biggest big play guy in special teams in the country, and then a fumble return. So, it goes right back to my season preview. Who is Sellers going to throw the ball to? They still haven't figured out who their wide receiver one's going to be. They thought Nick Harbor would be that guy in week 1 because he had 3 catches for 99 yards and a touchdown, and then he got blanked in week 2 against South Carolina State. No catches, got 3 targets. So it comes down to what's going to happen, man. South Carolina. I'm not going to pick a score here. I'm just going to say South Carolina and Sellers kind of find a rhythm this week. That's all I'm going to say.
Listen, I think this is going to be a.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Kev.
No, I was just going to say real quick, I think this game may come down to the last couple of possessions. I think it's a great game. Pavia said in the offseason that South Carolina is the game that he wants this year. So Vandy's playing well. I would not be surprised to see them go in there and win that game. I'm going to lean just a little bit with South Carolina and their defense. And South Carolina is going to pull this game out late only because it's home. I'll go 27-24 South Carolina, but it's not going to surprise me if Pavia goes in there and backs up what he says.
I mean, he steps up when the lights are the brightest. He is the king of the state of Alabama, after all. I think that Vandy can go into South Carolina and win the game. At the beginning of the year, when everybody was saying, I think that Sellers was the preseason first team SEC quarterback, and I kind of chuckled. I didn't see it. I mean, the kid's a great talent and everything, but I just don't think he's that guy yet. Not saying that Pavi is. Pavi is a gamer. Vanderbilt's playing well. I think Carolina wins the game. I think it's a field goal game. But like you, Kev, Vandy leaving there with a win wouldn't surprise me in any way, shape, or form. But I'll take South Carolina 24-21.
So I have a little bit of advice for the Vanderbilt special teams coordinator, Jeff LePack. Do not punt the ball to Bakari Swain this week. Kick it out of bounds, kick it out of the end zone, do whatever you have to. Do not let him touch the football this week. I am gonna roll with, when I initially thought about this game, I picked South Carolina, a 31-28 victory, but I'm changing that up tonight. I'm going with Vanderbilt going into South Carolina and pulling off a win behind a huge performance of Pavia, which is going to elevate him to maybe not being a sleeper pick in the Heisman for at least another week. He'll move into that conversation. I think this is going to be a 38-31 game.
I agree with you, D-Mac. I would just run it into the line of scrimmage before I kick to this kid. I mean, he is tearing it up, and the thing with football is you just don't want to let the best player on the other team beat you. You make everybody else beat you. Right now, he's the best. He's the best in America at doing what he does. So you just can't let that guy beat you.
All right, so we've got the rest of the SEC games to kind of go down through here. Some games we can probably run through pretty quick. Brian, you want to lead us off here with your Sooners that you go ahead.
Sooner or later, sorry, I had to do that. Sooner or later,
There you
I
go.
think John Mateer is going to come down to earth, but it's not going to be this week. Granted, I think Temple be a little surprised now that Temple is 2-0 going into this game and has outscored their opponents 97-17 so far. Okay, that's fantasy because they played nobody. Now the reality hits and Oklahoma comes to town. I think Oklahoma's going to sleep through about the first quarter and a half. I think they're going to have a little bit of a Michigan hangover, but I think they wake up probably just before halftime, kind of like Clemson did last week. Clemson had a little bit of a hangover losing to LSU. So I think Michigan pulls away in the second half very comfortably and wins at 37-17.
I think it's a comfortable Oklahoma win.
I
I
do
like
too.
your call of the sleepwalk, but go ahead there, D-Mac.
I'm just agreeing with you. I don't have anything of value to add to this game other than Oklahoma's going to score big.
Keep an eye on.
I agree.
Evan,
This is just one. Keep an eye on who?
I was going to say, keep an eye on Evan Simon, the quarterback for Temple, who's thrown 9 touchdown passes through the first 2 weeks.
That's a sleeper pick for the Heisman right there. Yeah, but Temple, I agree with you, Gumbo. I think Temple comes back down the earth like a meteor this week, and Oklahoma bombs them.
So that leads us into
Who's up next?
Alabama. That leads us into South Alabama, Auburn. As the next game, look, I think Auburn's been really good 2 different ways. Baylor, they depended on the running game. Last week they threw for 271 yards. They also ran for 224. South Alabama's got some talent. They'll win some games, but they did lose a close one at home to Tulane last week. I think Auburn wins this game. I think they'll continue to try to advance their passing game, but behind a strong running game also. So I think Auburn wins this game 41-13.
Yeah, I agree. I think Auburn wins this game big. I think Jackson Arnold's going to have another great game throwing the ball. Yeah, this game's going to go pretty south, pretty quick for South Alabama.
Yeah, this is just one of those games where Auburn wants to get out of there healthy and move on. They're going to win big. They just got too much talent for South Alabama, and it could be another week where, as you said, Arnold being a sleeper for the Heisman earlier, he puts up big numbers and he just elevates himself a little bit more into the conversation. So, I like Auburn big, and maybe they pull in mid third quarter, late third quarter if they get a big enough lead, because Lord knows they don't want to lose somebody when you're playing a school that you have no business, doing anything crazy against.
I think Jackson Arnold and Auburn pad their stats in the first half and get up big. And in the end, I think the final score will be something like, let's say, 38 rolls of toilet paper to 10 rolls of toilet paper.
Toomer's Corner, get ready. Sweets, what do you think on Mizzou ULL?
25th ranked Mizzou coming off a big win against their rival Kansas, 42-31. It's the first time they had met since 2011 in the border showdown. And Missouri was explosive on offense. Quarterback Bo Pribolo was a National Player of the Week after throwing for 334 yards and 3 touchdowns against Kansas. And running back Ahmad Hardy also had a great game with just over 100 rushing yards. Offensively, Mizzou's been great, moving the ball effectively. Pribula and Kevin Coleman Jr. have been a consistent threat for Mizzou. The one thing that Drinkwitz has expressed frustration with, though, is the offensive line's performance. He just doesn't think they're protecting Pribula well enough, which is a little ironic, being that he was National Player of the Week. But it's somebody, this unit's going to have to improve once they hit the meat of the SEC schedule, because there's a lot of good defensive lines in the SEC. The Raging Cajuns are 1-1. They beat McNeese 34-10 last week, relying heavily on the ground game. They had 315 yards on the ground last week. That's a hell of a day's effort there. Running backs Bill Davis and Zylan Perry both went over 100 yards. And they're in this game. They're going to be without Walker Howard, who's out with an injury right now. I don't think it's going to be close. I think Mizzou is going to lay the wood to him. I'm going to go Mizzou 34, the Raging Cajuns 10.
I
Well,
like
I think,
Mizzou in this one. I think like Brian said, I think Mizzou is capable of having a little hangover in the first quarter. After that, I think they stretch it out. Mizzou's got a lot of skilled players. Their roster's talented. Again, probably a 20-point win. Go ahead, Brian.
Well, I was just going to say, if I'm Drinkwitz, I'm going to take the guessing game out of it this week. They had 2 guys run for 100 yards last week against Kansas, and I think both of those guys, Roberts and Hardy, are going to both go over 100 again this week. Feed them the rock, get on the ground, don't worry about the quarterback. So I'm saying 45-7, Missouri over Ooh La La.
Yeah, I'm with you, Brian. I think Mizzou wins this game 56-10. I am going to point out one thing about UL though. They've only thrown 1 touchdown pass this season. I think they throw their second one of the season this week, and it goes to Sheldon Sampson, local Baton Rouge kid, went to Catholic High, gets his first touchdown as a Raging Cajun this week.
So former
I feel
5-star wide receiver, Sheldon Sampson.
I feel
Yeah.
D-Mac's going with a little Catholic High love there. I think that's the sense of that one.
Take care of your people, D-Mac. Take care of your people.
Exactly.
Well, that takes us to Texas and UTEP. Brian, what do you think on that one? Does Arch come out and have a great week this week?
Oh man, yeah, he's going to have a great week because he plays well against Sisters of the Poor. I felt really bad for him in week 1 against Ohio State. I don't think Sarkeesian prepared well enough to have Arch go on the road in a hostile environment like that, and especially against what you would consider an NFL coordinator who just got the best of him. I think against San Jose State, what did he had 295 and 4 touchdowns. I mean, Archie Bunker could pass for 295 with these cupcakes. But we'll have to wait another week to see Arch against the defense with a pulse. No, take that back. We're going to have to wait about 3 weeks because in the next, they play UTEP this week, Sam Houston next week, and Florida the week after that. 3 cupcakes. Yeah, I said that, Florida. So this game against UTEP could be played in Fort Stockton, Texas. It wouldn't matter. Played in a parking lot. Archer's going to pad his stats. Sarkeesian will have a 50-3 or something like that win, and then we'll move on to the next week. I'm calling this my ode to Mongo game. I think where the Steers win it in the end.
Yeah, I just, the only way UTEP has a chance here if the games at UTEP and the Texas guys spend a little too much time in Juarez on Friday night. Texas just has way too much talent. Way too many horses. And you're right. Arch feasts on the week. I see a 56-3 game here. UTEP gets a garbage field goal, but we probably hear a little bit of Arch back in the Heisman race hype on Sunday and Monday after he pads his stats against the Miners.
I say Texas is going to roll them. I'm not sure Arch is going to have a. I think he'll have a solid game, but again, the defense. Texas defense is so good. Give me 41-7 or 41-6. 2 field goals by UTEP. That's it.
Yeah, I'm
Obscure
going,
stat of the game: Colin Simmons gets 4 sacks.
I'm all
Calling
for
that
that
one. Colin Simmons gets 4 sacks.
Yeah, I'm going with Texas winning this one 52-10. UTEP a couple years ago had Bradley Del Pivoto as their defensive coordinator. He's at Texas State now. If he was still at UTEP, I would probably take UTEP first half. He'd be able to scheme something up well. Every game that UTEP played his couple years there, they played all the big teams really well for the first half. But he's out of El Paso now, and El Paso doesn't stand a chance this week. At least they get out of El Paso for a day and a half. So that brings us to the Alcorn State Mississippi State game. Alcorn State is not a very good team this year. Mississippi State's a team that we counted out before the season. Huge win against Arizona State at home last week. I do think they come out a little sluggish though to start the game. But at the end, Mississippi State's going to win 35-3 this week. They're going to play a little slow, probably 14-21 points scored in the first half. They score a couple more touchdowns in the second half. Let the backup quarterback get a little bit of playing time in the fourth quarter and just coast through this game.
I agree with you, DMAC. I think that Mississippi State they're feeling their oats a little bit, coming off a big win against the Sun Devils. They tore the goalpost down, took them to the local Waffle House, enjoyed a great Saturday night into early Sunday morning there in Stark Vegas. They don't have any trouble with Alcorn State. While Mississippi State's not the most talented team in the SEC, they're a lot more talented than Alcorn State is, and I think that they score a little bit here. I'm going to go 42-21 10.
Yeah, I think this is a game where Mississippi State comes in and just continues to figure out who are going to be their guys that they rely on once SEC play gets underway. I think they're going to do whatever they want, lean on the run game, especially if they get off to a little bit of a sluggish start. They're going to lean on the running game and not so much let Shapen sit back there and throw the ball 30 or 40 times. I just don't see that happening. I think they'll run them out of the stadium by halftime. I'll give them give me a 39-6 ball game.
Give me Mississippi State 48-10 over Alcorn State. I think their offense rolls. Mississippi State played well last week. That's no fluke win beating Arizona State. Now, granted, they had them at home, but the Cowbells in Starkville have a great night, Mississippi State. You're 3-0 after this week. So then that leads us into the last game of the week. Eastern Michigan is 0-2 against a really bad schedule. Long Island actually beat Eastern Michigan last week. I mean, can you name anybody on Long Island's team? Let me just leave it at that. Kentucky's a 23.5-point favorite. I think before the season we would have not said that Kentucky would be an over 20-point favorite over anyone. So I just say all that to say Kentucky's going to roll them this week. That's how bad Eastern Michigan is. Give me Kentucky 34, Eastern Michigan 3.
Big game for Zach Calzada this week, huh? If
Is he
he's
gonna
not
play?
banged
If that
up.
shoulder
Yeah.
allows him to play. If that
Yeah,
shoulder allows him to play, I think he
All he
throws
does
some-
is win, D-Mac. All he does is win.
I don't think he plays. I think the shoulder's that bad. I think Connor Boley's going to play, and I think he'll do well. They'll put up 50 points.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that Kentucky's going to do all they can to, to prove a point or to try to prove a point and show people that they do have a pulse. Stoops is another guy that's on the hot seat that we didn't mention earlier tonight. So he's going to want to win big when he can, and I think that he does it this week against Eastern Michigan. I go Kentucky 49-7. Who do you got, D-Mac?
Yeah, I've got Kentucky. I'm going to go 38-10. Yeah, they'll put up some points, score with ease. So not going to be a competitive game there in Lexington this week. So we've got one more question.
So the Cats will be above 500.
Yeah.
for the last time of the year.
So we've got one more question from Savannah here. How do you think Anderson's going to progress throughout the season after the rough first half he had last game? I will cover both Nick Anderson's positive performance last week, and we'll talk about Aaron Anderson. So I'll get things started off with Nick Anderson. It was great to see him catch a touchdown pass for the Tigers this week. He's a guy that LSU is going to need to be playing in the game to reach their full potential on offense this year. I think we need to settle in on 4 wide receivers and kind of roll with those guys. And I think both of the Andersons will be in there. I think Barian Brown's a dude right now. And if I'm leaning right now and picking number 4, I'm taking Xavion Thomas right now as the 4th guy up.
I agree with you, D-Mac. I think that if Nick Anderson can stay healthy, that's been the big issue since he's arrived in Baton Rouge. I think if he can get and stay healthy, he's going to be a big contributor to the offense, and we certainly could use him. And I agree with you. He's definitely one of the top 4 most talented receivers on the team. And I like him, Xavion, Aaron, as well as Barian Brown. And sadly, no one brought it up, but Chris Hilton, I just don't think he's ever going to do it. Off topic.
Hilton's a one-trick pony with that deep pass. Look, I don't worry about Aaron Anderson. He's a great route runner. I think he'll bounce back this week and make clutch catches. He always does. Nick Anderson, we need him on the goal line. Agree with what you guys said. He's in the top 4. With Green out, he'll be more in that slot and a goal line receiver. Will depend on him with his height. Brian, what you think?
I'm going to say Nick Anderson is more important to the offense than people think, because Barion Brown, Aaron Anderson, and Xavion are pretty much the same player. They're the diminutive guys who can scoot out in space. But you need a guy like Nick Anderson who's physical, who's big, who can be a matchup problem with defensive backs. So I think that's the one thing LSU's missing the first couple of weeks, is that big receiver who can go in the middle of the field and come down with the ball. I think Nick Anderson is that guy who could do that. So I think he's very important to where we go from here on out.
So that wraps it up for us this week on the Week 3 preview and predictions. Everyone who joined in the live stream tonight, thank you guys. Remember to go like, subscribe, and watch all of our videos this week.
Keep the comments.
I agree.
rolling.
Thanks for coming out, everybody. One thing I'd like to add here for all you fans, especially you LSU fans out there, go to BayouApparel.com and get your LSU swag from them. They've got everything you need. Go ahead and help them out. Support your own people.
Bayou Bandits, that defense, let that be known. That shirt's going to continue to roll. There's more things coming around the Bayou Bandits. So Tuesdays, 6:30 is going to be a consistent time. Look for some Friday night, Saturday morning type episodes also, and we'll continue those Sunday recaps, Saturday night late recaps.